I'm Anna Urban, and this is the Wildly Different podcast. I'm going to talk about all the wildly different takes out there on ADHD, neurodivergence, spirituality, manifestation, the meaning of life, trauma, shame, joy, purpose, and of course, all the actionable, practical strategies from the super scientific to the super esoteric. Some episodes will leave you with more questions than answers, but that's exactly the point. Is ADHD a disorder or a gift? Are we here to hack our time or maybe even to reimagine what productivity looks like entirely? How do we get ourselves to do the things we say we're going to do, even when every cell in our body would rather do something else? Are we neurodivergent, or are we aliens from Atlantis sent here to evolve humanity? Are supplements a scam? What's the deal with ADHD meds, and why do we have so much drama about it? If any of these questions resonate with you, then you've come to the right place. Let's get untamed. Welcome back, everyone, to the Wildly Different podcast. I'm Anna Urban, and today we're going to talk about impulsivity. What you think you know about impulsivity and what's actually true about impulsivity. Or rather, just like, I want to offer you a different way of thinking about it, because you might be thinking certain things about yourself and chalking it up to impulsivity, and that's actually keeping you stuck. So beliefs like, the blanket statement would be, I'm so impulsive. But if you dig a little deeper, it's like, I'm so impulsive about how I spend my money, or I'm so impulsive about my eating choices, or I'm so impulsive about, whatever it is, like fill in the blank. Like we chalk up impulsivity to ADHD and how our brain is wired, but that's actually doing us a huge disservice. And it's perpetuating this like belief that this is just who we are, we can't do anything about it. One of my goals in life is to redefine how we understand ADHD, because there has been no bigger liberation in my life than to switch from a fixed mindset about ADHD to a growth mindset, to an empowered mindset about what I'm actually capable of. So there's a big difference between what people think ADHD is and what it actually is. So it's these three categories. It's these three blanket statements. It's impulsivity, it's distraction, and it's emotional dysregulation. I'm sure you've heard, some version of this before. What ADHD actually is so much more complex. Like I can't even whittle it down to like one sentence. It's a different brain wiring. It's not a disorder. It's a neurotype. I like that, that definition of it. It's a different way of being. It's a different way of operating. There are some challenges. There are also some gifts that come with it, but it's completely neutral. It's completely neutral. And my gripe with the system is that ADHD carries this very negative connotation. Most people, if not all of the members who come into my coaching program, ADHD Untamed, come into it with a negative belief, a negative mindset about ADHD and what they're capable of doing. And so I get annoyed not with the system, not with you listening to this, not with your child who has ADHD, not even like with your teacher, your child's teacher who is trying to help them, with as best she can. My annoyance, my frustration is really like with the system. And today I actually want to unpack an example of a study that has like perpetuated this idea of like ADHD being negative, being a bad thing, and how if you look closely at the study, it's not defining ADHD. It's giving us some more insight that we can use in order to enhance our experience with ADHD. So I want to start by redefining impulsivity. If you look up the definition of impulsivity, it's acting without thinking. It's doing something without thinking. And so what most people label as impulsivity and ADHD isn't always acting without thinking. It's about looping on like the negative belief systems that are rooted in shame, in self-judgment. Like when we say, I'm so impulsive, what's really happening in our brain is that we're stuck in this cycle of believing limiting beliefs like, I'm lazy, I can't follow through, I'm not disciplined enough. So when we act on these beliefs, we're not actually acting without thinking. You never act without thinking. Like that's not possible. You may be acting without being aware of your thoughts, and that's a belief. Like you are acting without being aware of your thoughts, but you're always thinking. If you weren't thinking, you'd be dead. You're always thinking. It's just that when our thoughts, our beliefs are subconscious, it seems like we're acting without thinking, but in reality, we are acting on a deeply rooted belief system. And so that leads to quick decisions, and we call that impulsivity, but actually, quick decisions doesn't necessarily have to be bad, right? Impulsivity isn't the problem. It's the narrative that's driving the behavior that's actually the problem. So if you change the belief, then you can change the behavior. It's like psychology, neuroscience 101. If you change the belief, you can change the behavior. And so again, let's go back to the definition of impulsivity. Open up any dictionary, it'll say something like it's the tendency to act without thinking. If you look at the synonyms, it'll say spontaneous, instinctive, automatic. All of those things are also impulsivity. So again, my point is, not all impulsivity is bad. Not all impulsivity is bad. It can be tied to quick decision making, creativity, right? Aligned action. Look at Warren Buffett, for example. Warren Buffett is one of the most impulsive people in history. Why? Because he makes quick business decisions. I'm sure there are plenty of decisions that he made impulsively that did not work out in his favor. But it just so happens that the number of decisions that did work out in his favor outnumbered the ones that didn't. And so every time he made a decision, he gathered data. And that data helped him solidify his belief, right? His beliefs about, I don't know, the stock market, or his beliefs about other people, or his beliefs about, certain companies, whatever. So the point is, the more actions you can take, the more quickly you can change your belief system. And the tricky part is convincing people to take the action. That's more than half the battle as an ADHD coach, is like convincing people to take the action even though they feel scared to do it, or even though it feels uncomfortable. Like they have this strongly held belief, like I'm impulsive, Anna, you don't understand, like I'm impulsive. And in order to get them to change that, I first have to get them to start taking actions without fully believing like the new belief yet. But that is how you form a new belief. Like you have to take the actions first, and then the belief will follow, right? And so just bringing it back to impulsivity, because that was kind of a tangent. Impulsivity is not what you think it is. So I want to give you an example from a recent coaching call that I did. So one of my ADHD Untamed members was struggling with getting fast food more often than she'd like. She was going through the drive-thru, specifically Chick-fil-A, which is fucking delicious, okay? She was struggling with like the number of times that she was going through the drive-thru. And so when I started unpacking this with her, she blamed her impulsivity. Like right off the bat, she was like, I'm just so impulsive. But once I dug deeper, I realized like it wasn't the action that was the problem. It was the belief that was driving the action. So these were her exact words about why she was going through the drive-thru, and I want to relay this to you because I know you're going to relate to it. So her reasons were, I'm lazy, I'm incompetent, I don't plan well enough, I'm setting a bad example for my kids, I need something quick and easy, I can't control this habit. Maybe you've said things like this before, right? And so if you look at what impulsivity actually is, acting without thinking actually just depends on your belief system. You're always thinking. If she believes I'm setting a bad example for my kids, and she thinks that like going through a drive-thru is setting a bad example, like, well, then you're going to keep looping on that belief. You're going to keep doing things that confirm your belief that you're setting a bad example, right? It's like it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you believe I need something quick and easy and this is the only way I can get it, well, then you're going to keep looping on that belief system, and you're going to keep taking the actions that create that loop. And so it's not like she's a beautiful, good soul. Like it has nothing to do with like being a good person or a bad person, or like it's completely neutral. It's completely neutral. And what makes it difficult is like when people start exploring these parts of themselves, right? Like their ego, their shadow, like what they believe about themselves, they want to run and hide. Like they're not willing to go down that path, because when they actually say what they believe, like I'm lazy, that's something that's really hard to confront. And so I really I want to commend her for her bravery, because that is the greatest gift that you could ever give to yourself, is like looking at something like that with complete neutrality. If you look at something like, I'm setting a bad example for my kids. Well, is that true? Is that actually true that you're setting a bad example for your kids? What I pointed out to her was, because she was like, if I don't stop at the drive-thru on my way to go pick up my kids, well, then I'll be hangry. And when I'm hangry, like I am, I have less patience for them. Like she was explaining like her process, like her rationale. And I said, girl, are you setting a bad example for your kids? What you're doing is you are showing them that you are taking care of yourself by not allowing yourself to get hangry. Like you are taking care of like nourishing your body. I would say that's setting a good example for your kids. By you, getting food in whatever form it is, by you getting food and showing up to pick up the kids and like bring them to the park, you are more patient and you are more grounded because you have some food in your belly. And so that actually allows you to be a good example for your kids. So it's like, I want you to approach these beliefs, no matter what it is, no matter how dark they may seem, with neutrality, because then you'll start to diffuse diffuse some of like that energy that it has over you, right? So acting impulsively isn't inherently bad. And so if we can tweak the belief system, right? If we can tweak the belief to be aligned with our values, well, now we're going to be acting impulsively towards the beliefs that serve us, right? If we can start to shift our belief to something like, I am competent. I'm a competent mother. I take care of myself. Well, then you will impulsively take decisions that serve you. But when you continue looping on beliefs like, I'm a bad parent, I'm lazy, I'm incompetent, well, then you're going to impulsively take actions that sabotage you. And so what people try to do is they will skip to the solution without being aware of like this process. And then when it doesn't work, like after one time or two times, they're like, oh, see, I knew it. I'm just lazy, right? And so a lot of coaches will like skip this step of like shifting beliefs and like challenging you to like lean into the discomfort. They will come up with like all these practical solutions, like, oh, why don't you meal prep ahead of time? Or like, oh, why don't you, whatever, like, why don't you block off time in your calendar? Like, which all of these things can help. All of these, practical solutions can help. But if you don't actually believe that you can change, it's never going to stick. Like if you don't actually believe that your current belief is what is driving the self-sabotage, if you're not actively working to shift the belief and lean into the discomfort, well, then it's never going to stick. Like you're just going to revert back to the belief. And so a belief is formed over time. A belief is just a thought that you've thought over and over and over again. And so decades of research in neuroplasticity tells us that you can always change a belief. It just takes repetition, so like falling off your horse and getting back on, and intensity. And the intensity comes from like, it's the discomfort. It's navigating the discomfort. It's navigating it's building a tolerance for that discomfort and doing it again and doing it again. And when you make a mistake, it's being willing to sit with that discomfort in order to try again. And so practical strategies alone, if they haven't worked for you, you're not the problem. Like if new planners, new meal prepping systems, new budget tracking systems, like if that hasn't worked for you, you're not the problem. It's the beliefs that you have that are bringing you back to your old patterns, right? And so I just want to really neutralize whatever habit that you're doing, whether it's overspending, overeating, undereating, dating, the wrong people, whatever it is. I just want to neutralize it. I want to neutralize it and offer you a way to like shift your perspective so that when you're aware of your belief, when you're aware of what you're doing and why you're doing it, well, now it becomes much easier to start like acting differently because you know that shifting a belief takes time. You are willing to stick with it. So I actually want to bring up this study, one of the studies that helped to create this like generalization of ADHD, and I want to tell you about like why it was taken out of context. So one of like my annoyances, my gripes with the system is that research, like scientific research, was meant to offer more insight, but people will take these insights and like end up creating more problems, or like they will take these findings, or they'll take a headline of a study, or they'll take a soundbite from a news segment, and they will like generalize, right? So this is kind of an aside, but this is also why we really need to teach our kids critical thinking so that they can look at a study, or they can question what is being said to them, what is being fed to them by whoever is the authority figure. It is so important that we do not just like blindly take things for face value, that we question things, even if they are coming from a quote unquote credible source. Because often, like, people have narratives, people have agendas. And so it is so important that we are able to think critically. So let me tell you about one of these studies, okay? So in the 1920s, Lewis Madison Terman conducted a study that was known as the genetic studies of genius, okay? And so it's often referred to as the Terman study of the gifted. And Terman, at the time, was a pioneering psychologist, a professor at Stanford University. He was known for his work in intelligence testing, okay? And so he studied highly intelligent children over their lifetimes, okay? So then decades later, this guy, Howard S. Friedman, who was a psychologist and a professor at the University of California, Riverside, who was known for his research in health psychology and personality psychology. His work focused on how personality traits influence health, longevity, and well-being over, the course of your lifespan. So Friedman analyzed Terman's data to explore how childhood traits predict life expectancy. And so he wrote a paper based on his findings, and it was called Childhood Conscientiousness and Longevity, Health Behaviors and Cause of Death, okay? What he found was that low conscientiousness, meaning high impulsivity, was linked to shorter lifespans. So an average of 73 years compared to 81 years for high conscientiousness, okay? So for the high conscientiousness group. So Friedman did not specifically mention ADHD, but the study focused on the trait of conscientiousness, right? Impulsivity. And this is a like personality, dimension that involves self-discipline, organization, consideration of future consciousness. So conscientiousness is part of like a broader, understanding of personality. And so the connection to ADHD is indirect, but still like notable, right? Because ADHD, one of like the markers of ADHD is impulsivity, right? Difficulty with planning, challenges with maintaining conscientious behaviors, right? But so while ADHD wasn't explicitly addressed, this study is often used to like talk about executive functions and to, to kind of like shed some light on why it's so important for us to take ADHD seriously, okay? Okay, the point that I'm getting at is, from a study like this, and several other studies, like similar, people have concluded things like impulsivity is bad. People with ADHD have a lower life expectancy, okay? We've concluded things like impulsivity is bad, and people with ADHD have a lower life expectancy. And my take on this, a reframe that I want to offer you, is that this isn't the full picture. This isn't the full picture, okay? Impulsivity in the study led to cardiovascular disease or cancer, and it was tied to lifestyle choices like smoking, drinking, and exercise habits, right? Or lack of exercise. But a question that I have, and something that has become so painfully obvious to me in coaching hundreds of ADHD clients is, does impulsivity cause these outcomes? Or is it the lack of support, the lack of guidance in managing impulsivity? Like that's really what I'm getting at here. Is like, yes, we have these like scientific studies and we have, this research that like concludes all these things about ADHD, but like if we dig a little deeper, it's actually giving us insight that can help to shift how impulsivity is perceived and also how it's used. I just want to offer you some food for thought when it comes to questioning your beliefs about yourself and the things that you may have heard about ADHD, because these findings are often taken out of context all the time. So just imagine that there was a study that claims eating bananas causes extreme farts. This is not a real study, okay? I'm making this up, but this is like very similar to lots of other studies that like have come out, okay? Breaking news, eating bananas causes extreme farts. If you look at the study, they surveyed 50 people and 55% of people were allergic to bananas and thus, struggled with room clearing farts. The other 45% actually thrived on bananas. Like whenever they ate bananas, they became smarter, faster, and more creative, like just by eating the bananas. So if you look at the findings, you're going to jump to the conclusion that like bananas are bad for you. But the issue isn't the bananas. It's lumping everyone together and ignoring the deeper context. The same thing applies to impulsivity. Okay? Is impulsivity itself the issue, or is it how we frame and how we manage it? Could parenting, environment, or, specific, tailored interventions help impulsive children thrive, right? And it goes back to this debate, this, controversial debate of, is ADHD a disorder, or is it actually a superpower, or is it actually just something neutral? I tend to fall in the neutral camp. And when I'm not in the neutral camp, I'm actually in the superpower camp. So, But so the point is, what if we saw impulsivity as neutral, or what if we saw impulsivity as a strength, right? Like we saw it as boldness, creativity, quick thinking, rather than a weakness. So impulsivity, while it can lead to negative consequences, doesn't have to, right? Take kids, for example. A child who is struggling in a traditional school, who is struggling with impulsive behaviors, like getting up out of his seat or speaking without being called on, whatever. They might thrive in a learning environment that values those kinds of things, right? They might thrive in debate, or they might thrive in sports, or they might thrive in anything that involves creativity, whatever. And I get that that's not always accessible or available to every kid, right? But it's just some food for thought. And even how we talk to our kids. Let's say our kid comes home and it's Mom, I got in trouble again for talking without raising my hand. Instead of jumping to learn to control yourself, you're so impulsive. Could we frame it as I know it's hard. It's hard when we so badly want to say something, and we have to hold it in, and it's just a way of reframing it where it's they don't feel like they're the bad guy or the bad girl for talking out of turn. It's they feel more empowered to work on it, right? It's just, and this is just an idea. I'm just spitballing here. But the point is, I want you to realize that research focuses on averages, but you ain't average. It focuses on averages, but it doesn't explore how specific interventions and specific environments could alter someone's trajectory. Your impulsivity could end up being your biggest gift, right? If you allow it to be, if you explore how it could be. And so research shows a correlation, not a causation, between impulsivity and negative outcomes, right? And there's so many other factors involved here, like trauma, socioeconomic status, right? Lack of resources, but still, even if you account for all of these things, we could still navigate impulsivity for free. Like, we could still navigate impulsivity for cheap or free, because changing your beliefs don't cost a thing, right? And so impulsivity can be nurtured in the right environment, right? This is also why people with ADHD do gravitate towards like starting their own businesses, is because entrepreneurship rewards bold risks. It rewards creatives who think outside the box. It rewards, leaders who make quick, confident decisions. But your belief system is the foundation of whether those decisions like propel you forward or hold you back. If you change your beliefs, then you can change how impulsivity shows up in your life. Okay, I hope that this was helpful, and I hope that this gave you a different perspective on maybe some of your impulsive behaviors. And if you want to explore this a little bit deeper, if you want to like deepen your understanding of your beliefs and how to actually shift them, I developed a quick and dirty guide called Thoughtwork Simplified. And it was created for people who want to start the work of shifting their beliefs, but don't have all the time in the world and all the money in the world for hours and hours and hours of therapy or coaching. It's $27 and it is jam-packed. Like, it's action-based. So it's 1 hour. The meat and potatoes of the program is 1 hour long. And again, it's just $27. And in it, you will learn how to start shifting those beliefs and start taking different actions so that you create a different loop, like a different thought pattern. So it's not just going to teach you how to think about taking action. Like, it's going to actually teach you how to take action, right? How to take action that will shift your beliefs, like I'm impulsive, I'm bad at planning, I'm incompetent, I'm afraid of looking stupid, and on and on and on, right? You can start to shift those beliefs in literally an hour. Like, you can start to shift those beliefs to, I take care of myself, I trust myself to follow through on this, I'm good at managing my health, I'm good at managing my time, my money. I promise you, it is going to start radically shifting the way that you approach not just time, but how you see yourself. Head to the link in my show notes to get the guide, and let's get you out of that spiral and into a mindset that actually supports you. Stay wild, my friends.